My husband called me useless, mocked my father, and said, "Get money from your dad or get out." I walked away crying like I had lost everything, but he never knew the businesses he was begging to save were already tied to my name. My name is Briar Loxen, and for almost 4 years, my husband believed the quietest woman in the room was the easiest one to break. Talon Greer thought my silence meant I had no power. He thought my simple clothes meant I had no money. He thought my father was the rich one, the old man hiding family cash behind a dusty woodshop in Cedar Vale, Oregon. So when Talon's business started falling apart, he did not ask me for help like a husband. He looked me in the eye and gave me a price for staying married. Get money from your dad or get out. 6 months later, he stood outside my apartment with shaking hands, begging me to come back. By then, he had learned the truth. The money was never my father's. The companies were never my father's. The door Talon kept trying to force open had always belonged to me. The night he said those words, rain was hitting the kitchen windows like small stones. Cedar Vale was the kind of mountain town where people knew your family name before they knew your story. It had old pine roads, lake fog in the morning, and houses that looked peaceful until you learned what people said behind their curtains. Talon sat at our dining table with business papers spread everywhere. His luxury retreat project, Greer Stone Retreats, was running out of air. He wanted to build expensive cabins outside town for rich Portland couples who wanted weekend views, wine dinners, and soft blankets by a private fireplace. He had sold the dream well, too well. Investors believed him. Contractors believed him. Even his mother believed he was building a legacy, but I had seen the invoices, the late notices, and the lies folded inside his shiny folders. I was standing by the sink, drying a coffee mug, when he said, "Briar, we need to talk." That sentence already had coldness in it. I turned around. His face looked tired, but not humble. That was Talon's problem. Even when life was beating him, he still wanted to sound like the man in charge. He pushed one paper across the table and tapped it with 2 fingers. "I need $600,000 to keep the project alive." I waited. He did not ask how I felt. He did not ask what we should do together. He leaned back and said, "Your dad can cover it." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so far from the truth that my mind needed a second to catch up. My father, Briar Loxen, lived in a little blue house with a sagging porch and a woodshop behind it. He fixed old chairs, repaired cabinet doors, and wore a faded jacket with glue on the sleeve. Talon looked at that man and saw a bank. "Talon," I said quietly, "my father is not giving you $600,000. His eyes hardened. "Then you better change his mind." I set the mug down. "He doesn't owe you anything." That was when Talon stood up, slowly, like he wanted his height to do the talking before his mouth did. "You have 7 days," he said. "Get money from your dad or get out." The house went still around me. Even the rain seemed to pause. I remember looking at the man I had married and realizing he was not angry because he was afraid of losing me. He was angry because the money he thought came with me had not arrived. Let me stop here for a moment, because this is the kind of moment many people miss from the outside. They see a husband asking for help, and they think the wife should support him. But support is not the same as being threatened. Love does not put a deadline on your dignity. If a person says, "Bring money or lose your home," they are not asking for partnership. They are testing how much of yourself you will pay to keep them. And if you understand that feeling, stay with this story, because what happened next was not loud revenge. It was quiet truth, and sometimes quiet truth is the sharpest thing in the room. Talon did not know that before I married him, I had built a life he could not even imagine. My mother had started a small transport business before she died. Most people thought it ended with her, but I took what she left and grew it, quietly, patiently, under names Talon never bothered to ask about. I controlled Loxen Ridge Holdings, which owned land access and service roads across parts of Oregon. I owned North Vale Supply Group, which handled food and hotel supplies for resorts and event spaces. I held controlling interest in Harborline Capital, a private investment firm in Portland. And through Morrow Root Systems, I owned software Talon's retreat would need if it ever became more than a pretty drawing in a folder. I did not hide my wealth because I wanted to trick him. I hid it because my father had taught me one lesson after my mother died. Never prove your worth to someone who is already trying to price you. At first, I thought Talon loved me because I did not impress easily. I was never the woman who needed designer bags, loud cars, or my name on every conversation. I drove a plain white SUV, I cooked at home, I wore soft sweaters and old boots around Cedar Vale. Talon used to call that refreshing. Later, he called it small. The change happened so slowly that I almost blamed myself for noticing. When we first married, he said he admired my calm. By the 3rd year, he said I had no ambition. When his business started failing, he said I was too comfortable doing nothing. That was the part that almost made me smile. I was running board calls from hotel rooms, signing vendor contracts before breakfast, and protecting assets worth more than his whole project, while he told people I brought nothing to the marriage. 2 nights after the kitchen threat, Talon took me to his mother's house for dinner. Dora Greer lived on the hill above town in a stone house with white carpets, gold-framed mirrors, and the kind of furniture nobody was allowed to sit on naturally. His business partner, Kieran Mott, was there too. Kieran had sharp eyes and a careful smile, the kind of man who always checked where the exits were. Dora poured wine, looked me up and down, and said, "Briar, you look tired. Is the burden of doing nothing finally catching up with you?" Talon laughed under his breath. I felt heat rise in my face, but I kept my hands folded in my lap. Dora cut into her chicken and continued. In my day, a woman brought something to a marriage besides pretty eyes and quiet dinners. Nobody defended me. Talon just picked up his glass and said, "Mom means everybody has to contribute." I looked at him, waiting for the man who had once promised to protect me in every season. He did not even blink. So I said, "I brought loyalty." Dora gave a small smile. "Loyalty is lovely, dear, but loyalty does not pay contractors." Kieran looked away. Talon leaned closer to me and spoke low enough that only I could hear. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Ask your father." That was not a request. That was a leash being pulled under the table. I looked around at all those polished plates and expensive candles and thought how strange it was that some homes could look rich while being completely poor in kindness. The public insult came a week later at the Cedar Vale Charity Night. The event was held in the old timber hall downtown, with string lights hanging from the beams and local business owners pretending they were all friends for one evening. Talon wore a navy suit and moved around the room like a man running for office. He shook hands, laughed too loudly, and talked about Greer stone retreats as if the first guests were already unpacking in cabins that did not exist. I stood beside him in a deep green dress, smiling because wives are often expected to protect the image of the man damaging them in private. Then someone joked about how mountain development always cost more than planned. Talon raised his glass and said, "Well, Briar is still deciding whether her father loves me enough to save my business." The table laughed. Some people laughed because they thought it was harmless. Some laughed because they were uncomfortable. Some laughed because cruelty sounds lighter when it is wrapped in a joke. Talon looked at me, enjoying the room's attention, and added, "Maybe Briar Loxen will remember he has a daughter before I lose my patience." That line changed the air. A woman near the dessert table stopped moving. An older man glanced at me and then down at his drink. Dora smiled like she had been waiting all night for him to say it. I smiled too, but mine was different. Mine was the smile a woman wears when she is done explaining pain to people who are enjoying the performance. And here is a small truth I want to add, because it matters. Public insult is not only about the words, it is about the room. It is about everyone watching to see if you will swallow the disrespect so they do not have to feel uncomfortable. That night, I swallowed nothing. I simply saved it. If you are listening to this and you believe quiet people can still be powerful, then this is the kind of story you may want to like and keep close. Not because I was perfect, but because I finally stopped protecting the man who was embarrassing me. The next morning, I went to my father's woodshop. Merritt was sanding the arm of an old rocking chair, sunlight falling through the dusty window behind him. He looked up and knew immediately that something had happened. Fathers who have raised daughters alone learn to read silence. He asked for money, he said. I nodded. Then I told him everything. The kitchen threat, Dora's dinner, the charity joke. My father did not interrupt. He placed the sandpaper down, wiped his hands on a rag, and listened like every word deserved space. When I finished, he said, "Do you want me to speak to him?" I shook my head. "No. I want you to promise me you won't give him anything. Not money, not comfort, not even the idea that he scared us." Merritt looked at the half-finished chair in front of him. "Your mother knew men like that," he said. "Men who call it love when they are really counting what they can take." His voice stayed calm, but his eyes had pain in them. I should have seen it earlier. I sat beside him. So should I. He touched my hand. No. Loving someone is not a crime, but staying blind after they show you the truth can become one against yourself. I carried that sentence home like a match in my pocket. Talon came to the woodshop that same afternoon. I was in the back storage room, behind a half-open door, when his truck pulled up. He walked in without knocking. "Merritt," he said, friendly at first, "I think we should talk like men." My father stood near the workbench, calm as stone. Talon spoke about business, community, marriage, and responsibility. Then, when my father did not bend, Talon's voice sharpened. A real father doesn't watch his daughter's marriage fall apart over money. My father did not move. He just said, a real husband doesn't put a price tag on his wife and call it family. Talon went quiet. I saw his face through the gap in the door. Anger, embarrassment, and under both, fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. That was the day I started collecting everything, not in anger, but with precision. I saved Talon's texts. I backed up his voice messages. I kept the charity video someone had posted before Dora asked them to take it down. I took photos of the investor deck on Talon's laptop, where he had written Loxen family backing in bold letters. That phrase mattered. It was not only insulting, it was dangerous. My father had promised nothing. I had promised nothing. But Talon was selling my family name like property he already owned. At night, while he slept beside me like a stranger, I sent documents to Lennox Ward, my attorney in Portland. Lennox had handled my trust work before my wedding, before Talon ever knew there was anything to protect. Her first message back was simple. Do not warn him. Document him. I also called Sarah Vant, my private CFO. Sarah was sharp, calm, and not easily surprised. But even she went quiet when I told her how Talon had used the Loxen name. She reviewed every part of Greerstone Retreats and called me the next evening. "Briar," she said, "his project touches us in 3 places. Loxen Ridge Holdings owned the private access road his cabins needed. Northvale Supply Group was listed in his plan as a future vendor. Harborline Capital was reviewing a possible investment application connected to one of his backers. Later, we found Morrow Root Systems in his expansion plan too. Talon had built his future in front of gates I controlled, while calling me useless in my own kitchen. The night I left, I came home and found my suitcase at the bottom of the stairs. He had packed it badly. My dresses were twisted. One shoe was missing. My mother's framed photo was face down on top, like even the dead woman who built the first brick of my life did not deserve respect. Talon stood by the fireplace with a glass in his hand. "I warned you," he said. "No check, no home." I looked at the suitcase, then at him. This was the moment where an older version of me might have cried, begged, or asked how we got here. But that woman had been insulted out of me, one sentence at a time. "You're sure?" I asked. Talon smiled. "I've never been more sure." I picked up the suitcase. At the door, he said, "When your father gets tired of feeding your pride, don't crawl back." I turned around. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him that the companies he admired, the investment group he wanted, the land access he needed, all circled back to the woman he had just thrown out. But some truths are more powerful when they arrive late. So I only said, "I won't crawl anywhere." Then I walked into the rain, put the suitcase in my SUV, and drove to a lakefront apartment I kept under a company lease for visiting executives. Talon thought I was homeless. I was not. I was finally alone enough to act. That night, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter of that apartment and called Sarah. When she answered, I said, "Start the audit." There was no dramatic music, no thunder, no perfect movie moment. Just a tired woman in wet clothes, standing in a quiet apartment, deciding that the man who priced her would now meet the cost of his own choices. The first month after I left, Talon enjoyed his version of the story. He told people I had chosen my father over my husband. He told Dora I was spoiled. He told Kieran I would come back when real life got cold. I heard it all because Cedar Vale carries gossip faster than wind through pine trees. I did not answer. I woke early, walked by the lake, took business calls, and met with Lennox. Grief came in waves, but I did not let it make decisions for me. That is something people do not always understand. You can be heartbroken and strategic at the same time. Tears do not cancel intelligence. In the second month, Harborline Capital rejected Talon's funding application. The official language was professional. Unverifiable family backing, inflated projections, and lack of secured private capital. Talon called the review office again and again, demanding answers. He told one assistant that the Loxen family commitment was complicated but real. Within hours, Lennox sent him a formal notice. He was not allowed to use Merritt Loxen's name, reputation, land, or implied support in any business document. Talon called me after receiving it. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then he sent a message. "You're making this ugly." I saved it in the folder titled Greer, Coercion. In the third month, Talon went back to my father's house. This time, Merritt was not alone. Lennox sat at his kitchen table with a legal folder and a cup of coffee. My father later told me Talon's face changed when he walked in and saw her. He tried the charming voice first. "I don't know why Briar is turning this into a legal circus." Lennox opened the folder and said, "Mr. Greer, your messages and business materials show repeated attempts to pressure Mr. Loxen for money. Any further contact about funding will be documented as harassment and financial coercion." Talon said, "This is family." My father looked at him and said, "You stopped being family when you put my daughter out like unpaid furniture." For once, Talon had no room full of people to laugh for him. In the 4th month, Kieran Mott came to my apartment with a brown envelope. He looked nervous, almost sick. "I didn't know how far Talon had taken it," he said. I let him stand in the hallway for a moment before I opened the door wider. He sat at my table and admitted Talon had pushed him to use false numbers in investor materials. He said Talon kept promising that Loxen money would arrive before anyone looked too closely. "I thought your father had agreed privately," Kieran said. I looked at him and answered, "You thought that because it helped you stay comfortable." He had no defense. He gave me emails, draft projections, and notes from meetings where Talon had spoken about my family money as if it were already in his account. Kieran wanted me to say he was different from Talon. I did not. Men who stand near a lie and profit from it are not innocent just because they speak later. By the 5th month, Talon's image was cracking in public. Contractors wanted payment. One investor stepped back. A supplier paused talks. The charity board removed him from a committee after receiving the video from the timber hall, the one where he joked about my father saving him. I did not post it online. I did not need strangers to punish him. I sent the truth to people who had trusted him with money, reputation, and community work. That was enough. A lie does not always need a crowd to collapse. Sometimes it only needs the right witness. Dora came to see me after that. She stood outside my apartment building beside her white car, sunglasses on even though the sky was cloudy. "You've made your point," she said. I almost admired how quickly cruel people ask for mercy when consequences reach their own doorstep. "What point is that?" I asked. Her lips tightened. "My son is under extreme pressure. You could stop this." I looked at her expensive coat, her perfect hair, her mouth that had called me useless without ever using the word directly. "I didn't create his pressure," I said. "I stopped carrying it." Dora stepped closer. "Marriage is sacrifice." I nodded. "Yes, but it is not extortion." She stared at me. For the first time, she looked less like a queen on a hill and more like a mother realizing her son had gambled with the wrong woman. This is where I want to say something directly, because too many people confuse forgiveness with returning to the place that broke them. Forgiveness, if it comes, belongs to your soul. Access belongs to your boundaries. You can release bitterness and still lock the door. You can wish someone healing and still refuse to be their shelter. And if this message speaks to you, support this kind of storytelling, because stories like this are not only about revenge, they are about self-respect coming back to life. The 6th month ended in Portland, inside a glass conference room on the 12th floor of a building Talon entered like it was his last bridge out of ruin. Harborline Capital had agreed to hear one final revised pitch because a remaining investor requested it. Talon arrived in a charcoal suit, but the polish was fading. His eyes had shadows under them. His consultant looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Around the table sat board members, attorneys, financial reviewers, and Sarah Vaunt, who Talon knew only as a sharp executive with silver glasses and no patience for weak numbers. I waited in the adjoining room while he began. Talon spoke beautifully. That was always his gift. He described Cedar Vale as an untouched luxury market. He talked about jobs, tourism, architecture, and legacy. He made Greer Stone sound like a gift to the town, not a desperate project held together with borrowed trust. Then Sarah asked, "Mr. Greer, your earlier materials referenced Loxen family backing. Are you still claiming that support exists?" Silence stretched through the speaker. Talon had one last chance to tell the truth. Instead, he said, "The family relationship is complicated, but yes, I believe there is still a path." Sarah opened the side door and looked at me. "Ms. Loxen, we're ready." I walked into the conference room wearing a black suit and no wedding ring. Talon turned his head, and for 1 second he looked relieved, as if the wife he threw out had come to rescue him in front of important people. Then he saw where I was walking. Not to the chair beside him, not to the back wall. I walked to the head of the table and placed my folder down. His face went pale. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I sat slowly, listening to the man who told my father he owed him $600,000. Nobody spoke. Even Talon seemed afraid to breathe. Sarah brought his investor deck onto the screen. The words "Loxen family backing" were highlighted in yellow. I said, "My father never backed this project. I never backed this project. No Loxen funds were promised, committed, or discussed." Talon leaned forward. "Briar, this is not the place." I opened my folder. "You made it the place when you used my family name to raise money." Then came the messages, the voice note, the contractor email, the false projection sheet, the charity video transcript. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. His own words filled the room with more damage than anger ever could. Then Sarah changed the slide. "Loxen Ridge Holdings owns the private access road required for Mr. Greer's upper cabin development," she said. Northvale Supply Group was listed in his operating plan as a future vendor. Morrow Root Systems appears in his expansion budget. Harborline Capital is the investment group reviewing this application. Talon looked confused at first. Then his eyes moved to me. Slowly, the truth reached him. I said it clearly, because I wanted no shadow left for him to hide in. "I control those companies, Talon." His mouth opened, but no words came out. The man who had called me useless had built his dream in the doorway of my world. "You?" he finally whispered. That one word carried every insult he had ever dressed as concern. I nodded. "Me." His face twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" I almost felt sorry for him then, because he still thought my power was something he had been entitled to know before deciding how to treat me. "Because I wanted to know if you loved me before you saw what I owned," I said. "And because my father taught me not to prove my worth to someone already pricing me." Talon gripped the table. "You let me fail." I leaned forward just enough for him to hear every word. "No, I let you stop using my family as a lie." Harborline did not fund him. Loxen Ridge placed the road access request under review because his supporting documents were false. Northvale ended preliminary vendor talks. Morrow withdrew from his software proposal. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. Everything had a reason. Talon wanted to call it revenge because that made him feel attacked. But I had not created his lies. I had only turned on the lights. Before he left the room, I said, "I didn't ruin your business, Talon. I removed the lies holding it up." He looked at me then with anger, shame, and something close to fear. Not fear of losing his wife. Fear of facing himself without my name to hide behind. The divorce followed with less drama than he expected and more pain than I admitted. Talon believed my hidden wealth would give him a way back in. He thought he could claim betrayal. He thought the court would see him as a husband deceived. But our prenuptial agreement protected premarital assets and trust-held companies. He had signed it before our wedding with a smile because he thought I had nothing worth protecting. I still remembered him joking, "I'm not marrying you for money, sweetheart." Back then, I had believed it. Now the same paper stood between him and everything he had tried to reach through me. His threats also triggered a protective clause around financial coercion. Talon had been greedy, but worse for him, he had been documented. For a while, he tried anger. Then he tried memories. He sent photos from our first trip to the Oregon coast. He sent a message saying, "I miss us." That one sat on my phone longer than the others because there had been an us, at least in my heart. I remembered cooking with him on Sunday nights. I remembered him dancing with me in the kitchen when the radio played old country songs. I remembered the man I thought he was before pressure revealed the man he had been hiding. But memories can be dangerous. They edit out the warnings. They make a cage look like a home because you once laughed inside it. I saved the messages for Lennox and answered none of them. The day he begged me to come back, the sky over Cedar Vale was clear. I had just come back from my father's woodshop with a box of my mother's old ledgers. Talon was waiting near my apartment entrance. He looked thinner. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red. The confidence that used to sit on him like armor was gone. "Briar," he said. Not like a command this time, like a prayer he had no right to speak. I stopped a few feet away from him. "What do you want, Talon?" He swallowed. "I made mistakes." I waited. I was scared. I was under pressure. I said things I shouldn't have said. Still no real truth. Just soft words walking around the wound. Then he said the sentence that told me everything. "We can fix this. I know what you are now." My chest went cold. Not who you are. What you are. He continued quickly. "I mean, I know what you built. I know what you were carrying. I didn't understand before." I looked at him and saw the whole marriage clearly. He had not returned because he missed my laugh, my kindness, my quiet mornings, or the woman who had once loved him with full faith. He came back because the wife he had priced turned out to be expensive. "That's the problem," I said. "You only came back when you found out what I owned." "No," he said, stepping closer. "That's not fair. I'm your husband." I took the envelope from my bag. Divorce papers, final terms, clean, fair, and finished. His eyes dropped to it like he was looking at a death certificate. "Please," he whispered, "don't do this. I'll apologize to your father. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. I'll change." I believed that he was sorry. But sorry after consequences is not the same as love before damage. I placed the envelope in his hands. "You told me to get money from my dad or get out," I said. "So I got out." He started crying then, and I will not pretend it felt like victory. It hurt. Watching someone you once loved break down is not sweet, even when they caused the breaking. "I lost everything," he said. I shook my head. "No, Talon, you lost access. There's a difference." He looked at me like the words had cut him. Maybe they did. "Did you ever love me?" he asked. That question deserved honesty. "Yes," I said. "I loved the man I thought you were, but I will not stay married to a man who threatened my home, humiliated my father, and called it partnership." He held the envelope against his chest. "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "I believe you, but sorry is not a key back into my life." After he left, I drove to my father's woodshop. Merritt was sitting outside with 2 cups of coffee, like he had known I would come. Maybe fathers like mine always know. I sat beside him on the step, leaned my shoulder against his, and watched the mountains turn dark blue in the evening. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "Does it hurt?" I looked at my bare ring finger. "Yes," I said, "but not like staying would have." He nodded, and his eyes shone in a way he would have denied if I mentioned it. "Your mother would be proud," he said. That almost broke me. Not because I had won. Winning was too small for what had happened. I had simply stopped paying for a love that had turned into a bill. Months later, Cedar Vale still talked. Some people said Talon had been foolish. Some said I was cold. Some whispered that I should have told my husband about my companies. People loved to debate a woman's boundaries when they benefited from her silence. I let them talk. Greer stone retreats never opened. The land stayed quiet. The private road remained locked. Dora stopped looking at me in public. Kyron moved out of town before summer ended. Talon signed the papers when he realized no judge would turn his greed into my responsibility. As for me, I kept the lake apartment. I liked the mornings there. I liked the way the sun turned the water gold. I liked waking up without tension sitting at the foot of my bed. I learned that peace can feel unfamiliar when you have spent years calling stress normal. I learned that power does not always roar. Sometimes power is a saved message, a signed contract, a father protected, a suitcase carried through rain, and a woman who finally stops begging to be valued. Talon told me to get money from my dad or get out, so I got out. 6 months later, he begged me to come back, but by then I understood the truth. He never missed the woman. He missed the door he thought I opened to another man's money. But that door had always belonged to me, and when he came back knocking, crying, and calling it love, I did what I should have done the night he priced my place in his life. I locked the door from the inside and walked toward a life where nobody could ever make me pay to be respected again. Commentary, lessons, and explanation. Before we judge Briar, Talon, or the final revenge, we need to understand one important thing. This was never only a marriage problem. This was a power problem. Talon did not simply ask his wife for help during a financial crisis. He turned love into a transaction. He turned her place in the home into something she had to purchase. And the moment he said, "Get money from your dad or get out," the marriage stopped being a partnership and became a contract of control. That is the first deep layer of this story. Talon was not desperate in a humble way. He was desperate in an entitled way. There is a big difference. A humble person says, "I am scared. I made mistakes. Can we find a solution together?" But Talon said, "Your father must pay, or you must leave." That sentence exposed his real character more clearly than any long argument could. He was not asking for support. He was demanding access. He believed Briar's father was a financial door, and he believed Briar was the key he could force into the lock. And this is where the story becomes more painful. Briar did not marry Talon as a powerless woman. She married him as a woman who had already built something. She had companies, assets, business structure, and real influence. But she did not put that wealth in front of him because she wanted something pure. She wanted to know whether he loved her when she looked ordinary. That choice is emotionally powerful because it shows us one of the hardest truths in relationships. Sometimes people do not reveal their full power because they want to be loved as a person, not chosen as an opportunity. But Talon failed that test. He did not fail it quietly. He failed it publicly, loudly, and repeatedly. Look at how the insult grows. It begins in the kitchen, private and cruel. Then it moves to his mother's dinner table, where Dora uses polite words to make Briar feel worthless. Then it moves to the charity event, where Talon humiliates Briar and her father in front of the whole town. This progression matters. Abuse and control often start in private, but once the controlling person believes they can get away with it, they become bold in public. Talon's public joke was not just a joke, it was a warning. He was telling Briar, "I can embarrass you in front of people, and you will still stand beside me." That is why Briar's silence should not be misunderstood. Her silence was not weakness, it was observation. She was watching him remove his mask in front of witnesses. She was watching him build the evidence against himself. Many people think strength always looks like shouting, slamming doors, or giving an immediate reply. But in this story, strength looks like emotional discipline. Briar does not waste her truth on people who are still laughing at her pain. She waits until the truth has a room, a file, a screen, and legal weight. Now let's talk about Merritt, the father. He is one of the quiet moral centers of the story. Talon sees him as a wallet. Briar sees him as a man. That contrast is extremely important. Talon looks at Merritt and imagines hidden money. Briar looks at Merritt and remembers sacrifice, grief, work, and wisdom. Merritt may not be the richest man in the town, but he gave Briar something money cannot easily buy: self-respect. His line, "Never prove your worth to someone who is already trying to price you," is not just advice. It is the spine of the entire story, because that is exactly what Talon is doing. He is pricing her. He is saying her value as a wife depends on whether she can bring money from her father. In a healthy marriage, a partner's worth is not measured by what they can extract from their family. But Talon's mindset is not love-based. It is ownership-based. He feels entitled to Briar's family name, her father's reputation, and eventually, unknowingly, her company's. He does not know the empire belongs to her, but his behavior shows what he would do if he had access to it. That is why Briar's revenge feels satisfying. It is not cheap revenge. She does not create fake drama. She does not lie about him. She does not destroy him through manipulation. She simply removes the lies he was standing on. That is a very clean form of justice. Talon's business fails because the business was already weak. His reputation collapses because it was already false. His investor pitch dies because it was built on fake family backing. Briar does not invent his downfall. She reveals it. This is one of the strongest lessons in the story. Sometimes revenge is not about attacking someone. Sometimes revenge is refusing to continue protecting their false image. For a long time, Briar was protecting Talon without even saying it. By standing beside him at events, by staying quiet after insults, by not exposing his pressure, she was giving him the comfort of her silence. Many people do this in real life. They protect someone who is hurting them because they do not want public drama. They do not want family conflict. They do not want people to say they are overreacting. But silence can become a shield for the wrong person. In Briar's case, the moment she stopped protecting Talon's image, everything started falling apart. The 6-month timeline also matters. This is not instant revenge. This is slow consequence. Month by month, Talon loses control. First, the funding cracks. Then the father is legally protected. Then Chiron turns over documents. Then the public image starts collapsing. Then the final investor meeting reveals the truth. This pacing gives the story a more mature emotional rhythm. In real life, consequences often do not arrive like lightning. They arrive like water entering a cracked wall, quiet, steady, unstoppable. Kieran's role is also worth discussing. He is not the main villain, but he is not innocent either. He represents the people who stand close to corruption and benefit from it until the danger reaches them. He brings the envelope only when he is afraid for himself. That does not make his documents useless, but it does make his morality weak. The story does not reward him emotionally, and that is important. Helping after the damage is not the same as having integrity before the damage. Dora, Talon's mother, gives us another layer. She represents the family system that enables entitlement. She insults Briar because she believes her son deserves support, money, comfort, and forgiveness, even when he is wrong. When she says marriage is sacrifice, she is not talking about mutual sacrifice. She is talking about Briar sacrificing herself to protect Talon. That kind of thinking is dangerous. Marriage does require patience, compromise, and support. But it should never require one person to become a financial hostage. Briar's answer is powerful. Marriage is sacrifice, but it is not extortion. That line cuts through the entire emotional manipulation. It separates real commitment from abuse disguised as duty. And this is a lesson many viewers can carry. When someone uses words like family, loyalty, respect, or marriage to force you into something harmful, pay attention. Beautiful words can become chains when they are used by selfish people. Now let's open the investor room scene, because that is the true courtroom of the story, even before the divorce. Talon enters that room thinking he is still the main character. He believes he can perform confidence one more time and someone will save him. He speaks about legacy, community, tourism, and growth. But beneath those polished words is one rotten claim: Loxen family backing. That phrase is the whole lie. He has used Briar's name while insulting Briar. He has used her father's reputation while disrespecting her father. He has used the idea of family while destroying the meaning of family. Then Briar enters. What makes this scene powerful is not only that she is rich. The real power is that she enters with proof. Wealth alone would make the scene flashy. Proof makes it devastating. She does not say, "I am powerful, so I win." She says, "Here are your words. Here are your documents. Here are your false claims. Here is the truth you tried to bury." That is much stronger than a simple rich wife reveal. It is not just a status reversal. It is a moral reversal. Talon's question, "Why didn't you tell me?" is one of the most revealing lines in the story. He still does not understand. He thinks the problem is that Briar hid her wealth, but the real problem is that he revealed his character before seeing her wealth. He treated her badly when he thought she had nothing. That is the test he failed. And Briar's response exposes it perfectly. She wanted to know whether he loved her before he saw what she owned. That is a painful but beautiful lesson. People show their real values when they believe you have nothing to offer them. Watch how someone treats you when they think you have no power, no influence, no money, no audience, and no ability to help them. That version of them is often the truth. The divorce is also important because it completes the emotional justice. Talon thinks that because Briar is wealthy, he might still benefit. Even after the reveal, his mind goes back to access. That proves he has not truly changed. He is not thinking, "I hurt my wife." He is thinking, "How much can I still get?" But the prenup and coercion evidence close that door. The same arrogance that made him sign the agreement carelessly becomes the reason he cannot use Briar's success against her. This is not just a legal twist. It is poetic justice. Talon dismissed Briar because he thought she had nothing, so he signed papers without caution. Later, those same papers protect everything she had built. His disrespect became his blindfold. Now the begging scene. This is emotionally complicated, and that is why it works. Talon does cry. He does apologize. He does look broken. But the story does not confuse brokenness with transformation. A person can be sorry because they lost comfort, status, money, and control. That does not mean they are sorry for the harm they caused. When Talon says, "I know what you are now," he exposes himself again. He still sees Briar as a thing with value attached to ownership. He does not say, "I know who you are." He says, "what you are." That one word tells Briar everything. Her reply is the emotional judgment of the whole story. "You only came back when you found out what I owned." That is why she cannot take him back. If he had returned before the reveal, before the companies, before the collapse, maybe the apology would have carried different weight. But he comes back after he knows she is powerful. He comes back after he loses access. He comes back after consequences have stripped him down. Briar understands the difference between love and desperation, and her final line to him, "Sorry is not a key back into my life," is one of the deepest lessons here. An apology can be real and still not repair the damage. Forgiveness does not always mean restoration. You can accept that someone regrets what they did and still refuse to give them another chance to harm you. That is emotional maturity. That is not cruelty. That is boundary. The ending with Merritt gives the story its heart. After all the business drama, legal protection, and public reversal, Briar goes back to the woodshop. That is not random. The woodshop represents the place where her true values were formed. Not wealth, not status, not revenge. Values. Her father asks, "Does it hurt?" And she says, "Yes, but not like staying would have." That is the quiet victory. She is not pretending she feels nothing. She is not acting like divorce is painless. She admits the wound, but she also understands that staying would have been a deeper wound. That is a very mature emotional message. Leaving can hurt. Healing can hurt. Choosing yourself can hurt. But not every pain is a sign you made the wrong choice. Sometimes pain is the cost of freedom. Sometimes grief is what remains after you stop betraying yourself. So what do we learn from Briar's story? First, never let anyone turn your love into an invoice. If someone makes your place in their life depend on money, favors, family access, or obedience, that is not love. That is control with romantic language. Second, public disrespect is a serious warning. A person who humiliates you in front of others is not accidentally careless. They are testing whether your dignity can be lowered in public and still remain available to them in private. Third, silence must have a purpose. Silence without action can trap you, but silence with awareness, evidence, and planning can protect you. Briar's silence worked because she used it to see clearly and prepare wisely. Fourth, family should not be used as financial leverage. Talon did not just hurt Briar, he tried to exploit her father. That crossed a line. When someone pressures your loved ones to control you, the problem is no longer just emotional. It becomes a question of safety, boundaries, and protection. Fifth, wealth did not make Briar powerful. Character did. Her money created the reveal, but her discipline created the outcome. If she had used her power recklessly, she could have looked cruel. Instead, she used truth, documents, and lawful boundaries. That is what made her revenge clean. Sixth, do not confuse regret with change. Talon cried, begged, and apologized, but he came back only after discovering what Briar owned. His timing exposed his motive. Real change begins with accountability, not with panic after losing benefits. And finally, the biggest lesson: never prove your worth to someone who benefits from undervaluing you. The right people do not need to see your bank account, your title, your connections, or your hidden strength before treating you with respect. The wrong people will demand proof forever, and even after you give it, they will only want more access. Briar's story is not simply about a woman who had secret companies and defeated a greedy husband. It is about a woman who stopped letting love be used against her. It is about a father whose quiet wisdom protected his daughter more than money ever could. It is about a man who thought he was throwing out a powerless wife, only to discover he had thrown away the foundation under his own future. And that final image stays with us. Talon knocking on a door he once forced her out of, and Briar refusing to open it. Not because she is heartless, because she finally understands the difference between being loved and being used. She does not need revenge with fire. She has something stronger. She has peace, proof, and the courage to walk away from a man who only learned her value after losing access to it. The end